You fired him for defending an elderly farmer? What a disgrace. Mike, a bartender, stood up to a group of drunk corporate lawyers who were harassing an elderly farmer. His act of courage cost him his job, but he refused to back down. Just 2 hours later, the ground rumbled as over 200 tractors arrived, changing Mike's life forever. This is his story. Hi everyone. Welcome to Inspiring Stories channel. Let's dive in. Mike Stevens was a 40-year-old bartender at the Golden Harvest, one of the oldest establishments in their small farming town. Unlike many of his peers who had moved on to different careers, Mike had worked at the bar for nearly 18 years because he genuinely loved taking care of people. To him, the regulars weren't just customers, they were family. Life hadn't always been easy for Mike. He had been a single father since his wife passed away 10 years ago, raising his daughter Emily on his own while working double shifts at the bar. Though many told him he could find better paying work, Mike knew that money wasn't everything. The Golden Harvest had been his anchor during tough times, and he remained loyal to the place that had become his second home. The bar wasn't just any watering hole, it was the heart of their small farming community. The rustic wooden building had stood on the edge of town for over 60 years, and more than half the local farmers were regulars. Mike had started working there when old Mr. Carter still owned the place, and he had treated Mike like a son, even helping him with extra shifts when Mike struggled to pay Emily's college tuition. The bar was especially popular because of Mike. Not only was he an excellent bartender, but he had a way of making everyone feel special. He knew that Mr. Brown, who came in every evening at 7 p.m., liked his whiskey with a water back, and that Mrs. Taylor, a retired biology teacher, preferred her local craft beer in a chilled glass. After 18 years behind the bar, Mike could tell you the story behind every regular who walked through the door. But 3 months ago, everything changed. Mr. Carter retired, and his son Edward took over. Unlike his father, who valued community, Edward cared only about profits. He immediately began making changes, raising prices, updating the menu, and trying to give the bar a more upscale vibe. The regulars, who had been coming for years, started feeling unwelcome, and Mike watched helplessly as the warm, familiar atmosphere of the bar began to fade. One rainy November evening, Mike was working his usual shift when he noticed an old pickup truck pull up outside. Behind the wheel was George Harris, a 78-year-old farmer who had been coming to the bar every Wednesday for the past 30 years. His overalls were worn, and his hands were calloused, but he always had a kind word for everyone. George was more than just a customer, was part of the bar's history. On the wall behind his usual booth hung an old photo of him and Mr. Carter, standing proudly next to their first tractors back in the day. As George made his way to his usual spot, a group of men in expensive suits, corporate lawyers representing Agromax, a massive agricultural conglomerate trying to buy up local farms, started making loud, mocking comments. They were the kind of customers Edward had been trying to attract lately, always flashing their corporate cards and treating the staff like servants. "Look at that old-timer," one of them sneered, "still clinging to his little farm when he could cash out and retire. Probably thinks his organic crops are still relevant." Another laughed. "Bet he can't even operate modern equipment," a third added, causing the group to burst into cruel laughter. Mike saw George's shoulders slump slightly as he walked past their table. He knew George could hear everyone, but the old farmer said nothing, maintaining his quiet dignity. George had been through too much in his life to let a bunch of suits bother him, but Mike could see the hurt in his eyes. The lawyers grew bolder, and one of them stuck out his foot as George passed. Mike moved quickly, steadying George before he could trip. That's when he'd had enough. 18 years of watching the bar change, combined with seeing these men disrespect someone like George, made something snap inside him. "That's it," Mike said firmly, turning to face the lawyers. "Pack up your things and leave. We don't serve bullies here." The lawyers looked shocked. No one had ever stood up to them before. "Do you know who we represent?" one of them demanded, pulling out his business card. "Our firm works directly with Agromax's acquisition team." "I don't care if you represent the president," Mike replied, his voice steady. "You don't treat people like that in here. Not in the Golden Harvest. Not ever." The commotion brought Edward running from his office. When the lawyers told him what had happened, his face turned red with anger. "Mike, you can't throw out paying customers," he snapped. "Apologize to them right now." Mike stood his ground, just as he had through all of life's challenges. "No, sir. They were trying to trip an elderly man. That's dangerous and cruel." "Then you're fired," Edward said coldly. "Get your things and get out." George tried to intervene, but Edward wouldn't listen. Mike took off his apron, gave George a gentle smile, and walked out with his head held high, just as he had taught his daughter to do when facing injustice. What Edward didn't know was that George Harris wasn't just any old farmer. In the 1980s, he had founded the County Farmers Alliance, which had grown to become the largest agricultural cooperative in the region. Over the decades, they had become known for their community advocacy, helping countless small farms survive tough times. In fact, they had helped Mike years ago when he needed money for his wife's medical bills, though he never knew it was them. As soon as Mike left, George pulled out his phone. Within minutes, the story of what had happened was spreading through every farming community in the county. Other customers in the bar were also texting and calling friends, sharing how Edward had fired Mike for standing up to bullies. 2 hours later, the ground began to rumble. The sound of diesel engines filled the air as tractors started arriving not just from the County Farmers Alliance, but from every farm in the region. Old tractors, new tractors, farmers young and old, until the entire street was filled with over 200 tractors. George Harris led the group into the bar, now packed with farmers in overalls. Edward stood frozen behind the counter as George explained loudly what had happened to Mike. "This bar used to stand for something," George said, his voice carrying through the silent room. "Old Mr. Carter understood that. He knew it wasn't about how much money people had, it was about respect." One of the farmers stepped forward, a tall man in his 50s wearing a weathered cap and work boots. "I'm Tom Anderson, president of the County Farmers Alliance," he announced. "We've been coming here for 40 years' Severy Harvest celebration. Every community meeting, every fundraiser. This was our home base until today." He turned to Edward. "We've already called your father. He's agreed to sell us the bar. The paperwork is being drawn up right now." Edward's face went pale. "You can't do that." "It's already done," Tom said with a smile. "And our first act as owners is making Mike the new manager." The story spread quickly through social media. Local news picked it up, celebrating how the farmers had stood up against bullying. The County Farmers Alliance's reputation for community service grew even stronger. Today, the Golden Harvest still stands on that corner, now owned by the County Farmers Alliance. Mike runs the place with the same love and care he showed as a bartender. And every Wednesday, you'll find George at his usual booth, enjoying a cold beer. The lawyers who caused all the trouble? They came back a week later to apologize, not just to George, but to Mike as well. Turns out, seeing 200 tractors stand up for what's right taught them more about respect than any legal ethics course could. But their story didn't end with an apology. Moved by the farmers' solidarity and facing criticism from their own firm, the lawyers made an unexpected offer. They would provide pro bono legal services to the County Farmers Alliance, helping them fight against the very predatory land acquisition tactics they once facilitated. Now, every month, you'll find those same corporate lawyers sitting at George's table, respectfully taking notes as he explains the challenges small farmers face. Their legal expertise has become a valuable shield for the farming community, helping draft contracts that protect family farms and challenging questionable practices by big agricultural corporations. As for Edward, he tried opening an upscale cocktail lounge across town, but it never succeeded like the Golden Harvest. People say he learned too late that success isn't about fancy drinks or high prices, it's about treating people with dignity and respect. The bar now has a new sign above the door. Everyone's welcome, as long as you bring respect. And below it, there's always a row of tractors parked outside, rain or shine, reminding everyone that sometimes the roughest-looking hands are the ones most willing to help. Mike's daughter, Emily, now a college graduate with a degree in environmental science, often helps out at the bar on weekends. She works alongside the once arrogant lawyers who have become champions for the farming community, learning from both sides of a bitter divide. Emily tells everyone who'll listen how her dad taught her the most important lesson in life, that standing up for what's right might cost you something in the moment, but kindness and courage always find their way back to you. Perhaps the most powerful transformation was in the lawyers themselves. The men who once mocked an old farmer's way of life now defend it fiercely in boardrooms and courtrooms. They've discovered that their skills, once used to help corporations swallow family farms, can instead preserve a way of life worth protecting. One of the lawyers, Mark, who had been the most vocal in mocking George that fateful evening, became one of the most passionate advocates for the farming community. He often reflects on how that night changed his perspective. "I used to think success was measured in billable hours and corporate deals," he admitted during a community meeting. But seeing those tractors roll in, seeing how much George and Mike meant to this town, it made me realize there's more to life than climbing the corporate ladder. Now, I feel like I'm actually making a difference. Mark and his colleagues have since helped the County Farmers Alliance draft legislation to protect small farms from predatory land acquisitions. They've also set up a legal aid program to assist farmers in navigating complex contracts and disputes with large agricultural corporations. Their efforts have saved dozens of family farms from being swallowed up by Agromax and other conglomerates. Meanwhile, the Golden Harvest has become more than just a bear, it's a symbol of community resilience. Every year, the farmers host a harvest festival at the bar, celebrating the end of the growing season with live music, local food, and, of course, plenty of cold beer. The event draws people from all over the region, and the proceeds go towards supporting small farms and agricultural education programs. Mike, now the proud manager of the Golden Harvest, often takes the stage during the festival to share stories about the bar's history and the people who have made it special. "This place isn't just about drinks," he says, raising a glass. "It's about people. It's about standing together no matter what life throws at us. And it's about remembering that the world is a better place when we treat each other with kindness and respect." George, now in his 80s, still comes to the bar every Wednesday. He's become something of a local legend, and visitors often stop by his booth to hear his stories about the old days. "I've seen a lot of changes over the years," he says with a twinkle in his eye. "But some things never change. Good people, good beer, and a good community, that's what keeps this town going." As for Mike, he still tends the bar with the same smile that's been warming hearts for 18 years. He often says that the best part of his job is seeing the community come together, whether it's farmers sharing stories, families celebrating milestones, or strangers becoming friends over a cold beer. "Life's not always easy," he says, "but when you've got good people by your side, you can get through anything." And so, the Golden Harvest continues to thrive, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and community. The tractors still line the street outside, a silent reminder of the night the farmers stood up for what's right. And every Wednesday, as the sun sets over the fields, you'll find George at his usual booth, raising a glass to the people and the place that have made all the difference. Did you enjoy this story? If so, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more inspiring tales like this one. Make sure to watch the video playing on your screen right now. It's one you definitely don't want to skip. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.